There are a number of reasons the body retains water, but typically in general what's going on is there is something toxic to the body, in the body, which the body is trying to protect itself from. So I'll give you an easy example. It's easy, it comes up so often. 3 or 4 times a year, somebody emails me and that they've finished a fast with me a week earlier, maybe 3 or 4 days, a week, 10 days earlier, and they email me and they say, I've got all this water retention, my ankles, my legs, my feet, whatever. I've got all this edema is what it's called. I've got all this edema. What's going on? And I'll write back and say, what did you eat that had salt in it? I'm like, what do you mean? How did you know that? Because that's what does it. When you put salt in a clean body, a well-functioning body, the body says, I don't think so. Now, this happens to a lot of people, but a lot of people don't notice it because they always have edema. They're walking around with edema all the time. That's happening because there's something there the body wants to protect itself from. So salt is toxic to us. Okay, salt will kill life. That's why they would salt meat before they had refrigeration, to cure it, because no pathogens, no bacteria would survive if it was salted. Okay, if you're ever shipwrecked and your choices are nothing to drink or seawater, you're better off drinking nothing. You'll become dehydrated faster if you drink seawater than if you drink nothing, because the salt will dehydrate you. Okay, it will desiccate you. It'll preserve you. You'll be well preserved, but you'll die. And so, if you eat a bunch of salt, you're going to store a bunch of water. Your body will store it and will hold water until it can get rid of the salt. It's going to hold this water. Okay, it'll do the same thing with uric acid. So, people whose bodies are unable to process uric acid very well, which often includes people that eat a lot of protein, eat a lot of meat, are going to have a problem with uric acid. Uric acid is a byproduct of the metabolism of protein. Okay, it's a primary component of urine, but if your body's making a lot of it, you won't be able to get rid of it all. I mean, if there's a lot of it there, your body may not be able to get rid of it all, and so it's stored in the body. Anyone heard of gout?
Yes.
Gout is where the body has uric acid crystals it can't get rid of, and it holds water to protect you. Now, uric acid is crystalline form. What does that mean? Well, like the quartz, it's crystal. It's a crystal. If you could look at the thing under a microscope, each molecule has these sharp edges. Okay, and so imagine you have crystals in your skin, in your body. It would hurt. The body stores a bunch of water to protect itself, and that hurts too. Just not as much. It hurts because now it's swollen, especially if you live in the modern world, where people in the modern world typically do what with their feet? Put shoes on them. If you're barefoot, probably would be much less of an issue. If you got to squeeze that giant toe into a shoe, it's not going to be very comfortable. Okay? But that's what happens. That's what gout is. It's the body holding water to protect itself from uric acid crystals. There are other substances that can do the same thing. And this can be a powerful thing, this effect. I'll tell you about a client talking about gout. Years ago, I had a client referred to me. This was unusual. It was the first time ever. It's happened several more times since, probably 24 times since. But at the time, he was the first client ever referred to me by an MD, a doctor. Okay? And what had happened was I had a good friend who was morbidly obese, about 75 pounds overweight. He had hypertension, he had high cholesterol, he was on 3 drugs every day. He was 50 or 52 years old, and he was taking 3 drugs every day. And his doctor told him, now, so when we were still in the US, we started out just outside of Washington, D.C., like 2 miles from the city line. We had a big population around us, and I did a full-day seminar called Creating Perfect Health every month for 5 years until we moved away. And every month, I'd call my friend Bill, who desperately needed to make some changes. And I'd say, hey, Bill, got a seminar coming up this week. Why don't you come? Nah, no thanks. One day I call him up. Hey, Bill, got a seminar coming up this week. Why don't you come? He's like, okay, what time? And I'm like, what? Huh? What? He's like, yeah, I'm coming. And what had happened was the doctor had said to him just that week, you need 2 more drugs every day. He had more issues. It was getting worse. The doctor said, you need 2 more drugs. And it finally pushed him out of his comfort zone where he was ready to do something. Okay? So it was maybe a year later, the same doctor had a patient who had congestive heart failure. This guy was enormous. He was probably 300 pounds, and his heart was unable to keep up with the work, congestive heart failure, and he had gout, and he had a whole bunch of conditions, but his entire legs were columns of water. I was showing somebody yesterday, you know, right here is the shin bone, just below the skin. There's a thin layer of fat there, but you hear that? There's a bone there. All the way down from the ankle, all the way to the knee, there's a bone right below the skin. If you can't feel a hard bone there, you probably have a bunch of edema. With his the first time I saw him, I put my finger right over it, and I could push in, like I'll do it here on the muscle where it's soft, I could push in 3/4 of an inch. And when I let go, it took maybe 10 minutes for that to slowly come back out. Solid column of water, okay? Because of that, he was in a lot of pain. He could only walk maybe 20 feet at a time because it was very painful. He could only sleep for maybe an hour at a time and only in one position because every other position was painful for him. He had all these things going on. And his doctor had put him, this doctor that referred him to me, had put him on a diuretic. Okay? What do diuretics do?
Make you pee.
They make you pee. They remove blood, they remove water from the system, so you have to pee. And remember now, I've already told you that the body was storing the water. Why? To protect itself from something, right? In this case, it was uric acid. But the body was storing water to protect itself. So they give him a diuretic, but his body didn't want to let go of the water. Diuretic didn't work. So they doubled the prescription. Didn't work. They doubled it again. Didn't work. Wasn't doing anything. Okay? And he'd been on this like for months, maybe a year. And it wasn't working. And they said to this guy, they literally told him, you got maybe 6 weeks to live. So he calls me up and he says, my doctor told me I should come to your full-day seminar. And I said, yeah, unfortunately, we just had it this past weekend. The next one's, it's 3.5 weeks away. He said, no, I can't wait. So I did a full-day seminar for one person. I mean, he paid me a lot more than the normal entrance for the whole day for me to educate him. And at the end, I said, listen, you need to come fast, at least 21 days. And he said, no, I'm too busy. I can't do that. I'm like, too busy? You might want to take a look at your priorities, right? They've just told you you're going to be dead in a month and a half, and you're too busy. He said, I'll take 10 days. That's all I can do. And back then, we didn't book by the week. People would come for any length of time. So he wound up fasting for 7 days and refeeding for 3 days, okay? By I'm going to say the 4th day, it might have been the 3rd day, but by the 3rd or 4th day of his process, he had no more edema. Now, the average person, you guys, on average, would have lost 11 pounds, 5 kilos the first week. In 1 week fasting, he lost 32 pounds.
Wow.
Almost 3 times as much as anybody here. Water's heavy. Okay? If it was, let's say, the 4th day, the edema was gone, where do you think he spent the 3rd day?
Bathroom.
In the bathroom all day long peeing. His body, with 3 days fasting, had been able to get rid of the uric acid and now had no need for the water. And he spent all day going back and forth to the toilet to pee. I mean, he probably peed 50 times that day. And all this excess fluid was gone by the 4th day. After 1 week of fasting, he could walk a mile, He could sleep all night. 1 week. He was a new man. Now, the one thing, he started with hypertension, right? He had high blood pressure. When we have somebody old enough who's got hypertension, their blood pressure goes up, not down. Most of your blood pressure went down from the beginning. His went up. And then it comes down. It takes about a week to get to where it started, and then it begins to go down. Why do you think that happens?
Heart's working to pump out, get rid of the water?
Okay, the heart is working, but that doesn't necessarily explain the blood pressure going up. Why did the blood pressure go up? Let me set the scene. One of the primary reasons people develop hypertension is they got a bunch of garbage in the arteries, plaque. As the body breaks that plaque down, what happens to the blood? It becomes,
Easy flow.
say again?
Easy flow.
Easy flow? Well, initially, what happens to the blood itself? There's less obstruction in the walls of the artery, but what happens to the blood itself?
Gets more toxins in it.
It becomes thicker. And thicker blood means higher pressure. Once all the garbage is gone and the arteries are flexible again eventually with time, then pressure would go down. But initially, if you have a whole bunch of garbage in the bloodstream, all this fat in the bloodstream, blood's going to be thicker, pressure is going to go up. And that's what happens. The only reason it doesn't happen for everybody else is you're not old enough and you don't have enough of this garbage. But anyone over about 55 or 60 with hypertension, we're going to see their blood pressure go up before it comes down. Almost every case. Okay? So after a week, his blood pressure was higher than when he started. And he said, I'm gonna go see the doctor this week and see what he thinks. I said, no, don't do that. Don't do that. Because what do you think I knew was going to happen if he did that? Doctor was going to tell him he had to start taking hypertensive drugs again, which is exactly what he did. After all the benefit he got, he went back to the doctor, and the doctor inevitably said, of course said, because the doctor does not understand any of this, all they know is how to suppress symptoms. Doctor said to him, blood pressure is higher than it was before. You need to get back on these drugs right away. Anyone know what the number one, most of these drugs, there's actually 5 or 6 different classes of drugs used to treat hypertension. Okay, they're all intended to reduce pressure in ways that have nothing to do with the underlying cause of the problem. Okay? Some of them clean the garbage out of the arteries. That's the intention. Some of them are intended to dilate the artery wider, which means easier blood flow. Some of them slow down the heart rate. Some of them are diuretics. They just take liquid off. Less pressure, right? Because who knows better how much blood you should have? Your body or Merck Pharmaceuticals?
Your body.
Who knows better how fast your heart should be beating? Your body or Pfizer Pharmaceuticals?
God.
All these drugs do is they manipulate symptoms. So the pressure goes down. Are you healthier? Nope. And statistically, people don't live 1 day longer taking these drugs. But they've got good numbers. Oh, look at your blood pressure. You're good now, right? Not at all. Let's talk about the drugs that slow down the heart rate. Because if you slow down the pump, pressure goes down. Anyone want to guess what the number one side effect of these drugs, reported side effect of these drugs is?
Dizziness?
Nope, it's a good guess. It's on the list. Number one reported side effect, it's not dizziness though. It's depression. Because by slowing down the heart rate, you are reducing the amount of blood and oxygen that reach your brain. And you get depressed. Anybody want to guess what I would say is the number one unreported side effect of these drugs? Stupidity. For the same reason.
Stupidity?
Stupidity. Because your brain is not getting the blood and nutrients that it needs. How well are you going to be able to think if it's not getting what it needs? Okay? So what happened was they put him back on the drugs and he became depressed. He left me going, man, you know, in fact, when he started out, he did this full day with me, full day consultation, 8-hour consultation, okay, 8 hours. And then he came to fast a week later, fasted for 1 week. While he's fasting, he says to me, he says, Loren, he said, I mean, this guy owned 2 companies and was very busy and was very wealthy. And he would eat lunch and dinner out every day at restaurants, rich, heavy food. And he said, Loren, he said, everything you've said makes sense, but I can't see myself giving up all my favorite things. I said, well, you don't have to, but you might want to decide how much you want to be alive. It's up to you. He starts refeeding, and we did something we don't do anymore. One of his choices, I mean his choice for the first day refeeding, first meal, because with the fast that short, meals can be different. His first meal was cucumbers. I like cucumbers. Not the most flavorful things in the world, though, can we agree? Not the most exciting of foods. He takes a bite of a cucumber, and he says to me, he says out loud, he said, oh my God, this is delicious. If everything is going to taste this good, I can do this. I can follow this program. And that was his intention leaving us. And then he goes back on the drugs and becomes depressed and says, fuck it, I'll eat whatever I want. Because that's what depressed people do. They don't take care of themselves. And I had a videographer friend, I think I've mentioned him to you. Some of you were here at the time. This guy that worked for Discovery Channel and CNN, who fasted with me a couple times for 30 days. He was recording interviews with Jim throughout the process. It was amazing. Jim was the stereotypical jovial fat guy. Everything's a joke, right? Why does this happen? Why do you think people do that?
Hide their true nature.
They're hiding their pain. These are people in pain, right? Robin Williams. I have a friend who knew Robin Williams personally and said, you can't have a serious conversation with him. Like he's always in character. He committed suicide. He killed himself. He was depressed. That's what people do, okay? That's what he was doing to try to cover up the pain he was in. And he was never serious. He was never showed any sadness. We interviewed him 3 times in the 10 days he spent at Tanglewood. He cried every time. He was so moved by what was going on for him. At the end, he was unbelievable how good he felt and how different, how much better he felt, right? And so Grant, the videographer, decides a few months later that he'll contact Jim to see if he can do a follow-up interview. He was thinking maybe we'd put together a documentary at some point, right? And he was going to be one of the stories. So Grant calls Jim's house, and Jim's wife answers and says, Grant, I'm sorry, I can't talk to you right now. I've got to go to the hospital where Jim is in critical condition. Okay? He went back to eating all the crap he was eating before and wound up in the hospital about to die. And that's the end of the story. I don't know what happened. I never heard from him again, and we never talked to him again. But the drugs depressed him and probably killed him. And had he not gone on drugs, the friend who changed, who the reason that Jim was referred to me by this doctor was because of my friend Bill. My friend Bill started using this doctor all the way across town. The doctor was near me. Bill lived on the other side of town. And the reason Bill went to this doctor is because his daughter was the doctor's new receptionist. So Bill started seeing this doctor. He'd been there for maybe a year, seeing this guy. And Bill finally came to the seminar after 2 years of saying no thanks. Finally came, got it. It made sense to him. How many of you has it made sense for, what I've said so far since you've been here? Okay, so Bill got it and left there. That's it. He ate nothing but fruit and salad from that point on. 100% fruit and salad, nothing else. In fact, he and his wife split up. They were both obese. His wife had no interest in changing. 6 months later, Bill's a new man. The wife's not interested in doing anything different, and they went their separate ways. But 4 months later, Bill had lost 75 pounds without trying, just by changing his diet, and no longer needed any drugs. He'd been on 3 medications every day. He was off all the drugs. He lost 75 pounds. He goes for a checkup to the doctor, and the doctor says, "What did you do? How did you accomplish this?" And Bill said, "Call Loren Lockman." And to the doctor's credit, he did. He made an appointment with me. I don't know if he understood most of what I said, but he got it that this had helped. And I think when Jim came along, my guess is, I said to the doctor and the cardiologist, the two of them, I said he needs to come off of the hypertensive drugs. And the cardiologist says, "Hey, it'll kill him." I said, "Well, you're the doctor, you're the cardiologist, I don't know, but my experience so far has been, at that point, I'd probably fasted 10 or 15 people. This is like in my first year, second year that we were open, 20 years ago. I said, we've only seen 10 or 15 people with hypertension, but they've all healed. No one's died. They've all eliminated still 100%. 100% elimination of hypertension. Fasting 21 days, not 7 days, but 21 days. So he agreed. The doctor said, "Okay, we'll take him off." We had type 2 diabetes. I said, "You have to take him off the drugs." "No, we can't do that." I explained why. They said, "Okay." And I don't think I really I'd like to think it's because I'm so intelligent and so persuasive. I don't think so. I think they thought, you know what? This guy's going to die. Better if he dies at Loren's place, not under our care. That's better, right? That's what I think happened. But he left us a new man, and had he just hung in there, he would, just like Bill, he would have needed no drugs. He would have lost a lot more of the weight he needed. He still was probably 100 pounds overweight after the fast, but he would have lost it over time, just like Bill did. He would have not needed any drugs. He didn't need them then. But going back on him literally killed him. Okay, so one example, we started out talking about water retention. There's an example of gout, uric acid. Usually it starts in the big toe because uric acid crystals are heavy. So they wind up lodging in the largest, lowest extremity, the big toe. In his case, his entire feet, lower legs, and upper legs were filled with water. The entire thing. Now, I've had a client, the woman who has fasted with me the most, and never at Tanglewood, 2 distinctions. She's fasted with me, I think, 12 or 13 times, all via Skype. She was raising 2 kids and didn't want to be away for very long. And we did a bunch of short fasts and 3 longer ones. And one of her issues is that she would constantly have edema. She'd make, one little misstep and she'd just blow up with water. And it was incredible. Like 15 pounds overnight. To the point that she would say it would feel like her face, her breasts, her arms were going to burst. The skin was so tight with all this water. Or imagine you're your size and you try to get a bunch of excess stuff in there too, under your skin. Very uncomfortable. Normally in 11 or 12 days, it would all be gone. She'd lose weight really fast. Okay? Because it would all go away quickly. And in her case, it wasn't salt, it wasn't uric acid. At one point, she'd already fasted with me a couple times, and she said, "Loren, I don't see an MD, but I see a naturopath." And I forgot what was going on. She had some little minor issue. Said the naturopath wants me to coming all the way back around, and this was not culinary herbs, but wants me to take this medicinal herb. Naturopath wants me to take an herb. She said, "I think I know what you're going to say, but I just wanted to ask your opinion." I said, you know what I'm going to say. Of course not. All herbs are toxic. You put it in your clean body, your body's not going to be happy. Put it in the average garbage-filled body, a little herb, your body's not going to notice it. In her body, she immediately blew up like a balloon with edema from a medicinal herb. And we fasted her again to get rid of it. Okay?
Was that genetic in her family, the edema?
Don't know. She never mentioned that. It's possible. But, that, with an herb, not everyone's going to have that response. With anything, not everyone's going to have the response. But when the cleaner the body is, the more it's going to react. So I hear it, as I said, at least 4 times a year. I'll get an email from a faster who says, I've blown up like a balloon. Why? I have all this edema. What's happened? All this water retention. And I'll write them back and say, what did you eat that had salt in it? Did you eat any processed food? All processed foods are loaded with mineral salts. Sodium chloride, that's salt. Potassium chloride, magnesium chloride, they're all toxic inorganic minerals. They're in all processed foods. Okay, the clean body is going to go, yeah, I don't think so. I don't want that.